This is Daily Armenia, CivilNet's daily news digest. Here's what you need to know today. Nikol Pashinyan's press secretary has indicated the Prime Minister does not plan to attend this year's Global Climate Summit, which will be held in Azerbaijan in November, pouring cold water on online speculation that Pashinyan may attend. Such a visit is not planned, Nazeli Baghdassaryan told the Armen press news agency today, without elaborating. Baku was awarded hosting rights for the summit, called COP29, after Yerevan agreed last year to drop its opposition in exchange for the release of nearly 36 Armenian prisoners of war held in Azerbaijan. Last month, Pashinyan said he hopes to sign a normalization deal with Azerbaijani President Ilham Aliyev by the time the summit begins. Aliyev previously said that timeline seems quite realistic. In a letter to Aliyev earlier this week in the run-up to COP29, US President Joe Biden stressed that a durable and dignified peace agreement that ends decades of conflict would transform the South Caucasus and fundamentally change Azerbaijan's role in the region. In related news, Azerbaijan's top diplomat has again suggested Armenia should amend its constitution as a precondition for a future normalization deal, just after his Armenian counterpart indicated constitutional changes are not on the agenda. Speaking to reporters yesterday, Foreign Minister Ceyhun Bayramov slammed what he called unacceptable attempts to draw parallels between Azerbaijan and Armenia in this matter, and echoed earlier demands by Aliyev for constitutional changes. That came just one day after Ararat Mirzoyan told lawmakers, both our constitution and theirs cannot legally present problems for the establishment of long-term peace. There was no immediate reaction from Yerevan to Bayramov's latest comments. Earlier this year, Aliyev said Armenia must remove references to Nagorno-Karabakh, Mount Ararat, and the Armenian genocide from its constitution before a peace agreement can be signed. After that, Pashinyan signaled he would be open to amending Armenia's constitution, but without specifying what exactly he would change and why. Despite those remarks, Bayramov also told reporters yesterday the number of unresolved issues in ongoing negotiations between Yerevan and Baku had been reduced, calling the dynamic positive. There were no other details made available. The recovery from devastating flooding in northern Armenia continues, with more than 90% of the cleanup work already completed, Infrastructure Minister Gnel Sanosyan said today. A vital highway connecting Armenia and Georgia has reopened to most traffic, and some of the villages that had been cut off from the rest of the country have been reconnected with temporary bridges. Most residents have had utilities restored. Sections of the damaged railroad line have been restored as well, though it is still not operational. One major concern in the wake of the disaster was the integrity of tailings dams, structures that store the highly toxic byproducts of mining operations. An infrastructure ministry spokesperson told the local investigative outlet Hekt this week that none of the tailings dams in the disaster zone have been damaged. A large number of Armenia's tailing dams are concentrated there. Last month's historic flooding across Armenia's northern Lori and Tavus regions caused great destruction and left at least 4 people dead. Lithuania and Switzerland are among the countries that have announced they will provide aid and experts to address the situation. For more on this developing story, check out CivilNet's latest report from the disaster zone, where we spoke with survivors as they cope with the destruction. You can find a link to it in the video description below. You can also find their links to our latest English language broadcasts. On this week's Insights, Eric Hakopian explores Baku's encouragement of mass violence in the French overseas territory of New Caledonia and reviews the controversies surrounding this year's commemoration and protests at the highly symbolic Sardarabad Memorial last month. In another video, we explore what it's like to live in Armenia with Down syndrome by spending a day with 16-year-old Yerevan resident Sarkis through both challenges and successes. And we also sat down with Kirsti Narinen, Finland's ambassador to the South Caucasus, who joined us to talk about her country's total defense strategy, which encourages close cooperation between the government, the public, and the private sector, and what Armenia could learn from it. And finally, the CivilNet number of the day is 121. That's because the renowned 20th century composer Aram Khachadurian was born on this day in Tbilisi, Georgia, 121 years ago. Khachadurian composed the first Armenian ballet music, symphony, concerto, and film score. His work brought Armenian music to international attention, and his scores have been used in a number of films, most famously the 1968 classic 2001: A Space Odyssey. He died in 1978 in Moscow and is now buried in Yerevan. And as always, please follow CivilNet for the latest news and independent reporting from our contributors on the ground here in Armenia.